8 seconds. That's all it would have taken. One command, one beam of impossible power. And the heart of the galaxy, Coruscant, would have been reduced to ash. What if the First Order had chosen differently? What if Starkiller Base had not burned Hosnian Prime, but the cradle of civilization itself? This is a tale whispered only in shadow, a prophecy never meant to be spoken aloud. For in this forbidden timeline, the galaxy's brightest jewel is extinguished, and in its place rises an age of chaos, sorrow, and fury. Coruscant was more than a capital. It was the galaxy's memory, its identity, its anchor in an ever-shifting sea of war. To see it destroyed would be to sever history from the future, to unmoor billions of lives from the center that gave them meaning. In this what-if, destiny fractures. Heroes stumble down unfamiliar paths. Factions scramble for power in a galaxy unbound. And the Force itself trembles at the erasure of such a sacred place. This is not the story you know. This is the story the galaxy prayed it would never face. Welcome to the Dark Timeline. Imagine the unthinkable. Starkiller Base fires, and instead of Hosnian Prime, its target is Coruscant, the shining jewel of the galaxy and the seat of galactic power for thousands of years. The very moment the planet explodes, the galaxy isn't just losing a world, it's losing the political heartbeat of civilization. That's the kind of shockwave that doesn't just spread through hyperspace. It tears apart the very fabric of order. For centuries, Coruscant has represented stability, authority, and legitimacy. Even when governments changed hands, from the Old Republic to the Empire to the New Republic, Coruscant was the constant. It was the capital city where laws were debated, wars were declared, and peace was attempted. By destroying it, the First Order wouldn't just wipe out a government. They'd erase the galaxy's symbolic center of unity. Think of it this way. If you remove the planet that everyone sees as the capital of civilization, suddenly all other star systems are left asking the same terrifying question. Who's really in charge now? The political fallout would be immediate and catastrophic. The Senate, countless representatives, diplomats, and leaders would vanish in an instant. The bureaucracy holding together thousands of star systems would collapse overnight. Without Coruscant, the galaxy wouldn't just be scared, it would be leaderless. And a leaderless galaxy is the perfect breeding ground for chaos. Now here's the real twist. This chaos might not work entirely in the First Order's favor. Yes, they would strike fear into billions of people across the galaxy, showing off their terrifying weapon of mass destruction. But fear doesn't automatically create obedience. Fear creates resistance. Worlds on the outer rim and mid-rim, already skeptical of centralized authority, might decide that without Coruscant, there's no reason to answer to anyone. Instead of a unified galaxy bowing to the First Order, you could end up with fractured alliances and splinter governments popping up everywhere. The galaxy might become more unstable than Palpatine himself could have ever imagined. And don't forget the symbolic weight. Coruscant wasn't just another planet. It was the place people looked up to, literally. Its endless cityscape, its Jedi temple, its monuments. It was a reminder that even in a chaotic galaxy, there was one place everyone could recognize as the center. Destroying it would feel less like a military victory and more like a cosmic betrayal, sending billions into shock, grief, and outrage. The First Order wouldn't just be fighting the Resistance anymore. They'd be fighting the rage of entire star systems suddenly united by loss. So here's the big question. If Coruscant fell, would the First Order really solidify their power, or would they spark the greatest rebellion in galactic history? When you think about Coruscant, it's not just a government hub. It's the cultural heartbeat of the galaxy. This is the planet where history, tradition, and legacy intertwine. Destroying Coruscant wouldn't just be about wiping out politicians or military leaders. It would be about erasing thousands of years of civilization in a single flash of light. Let's start with the Jedi Temple. Even though it had fallen into ruins and been repurposed by the Empire, it still stood as a living monument to the galaxy's most legendary guardians. Generations of Force users had walked those halls. Imagine the symbolism of watching it all vanish, gone forever, leaving nothing but ash and memory. That act alone would echo through the Force itself, leaving Jedi and Sith alike grappling with what it means to see such a historic site obliterated. But the Jedi Temple is only the beginning. Coruscant housed museums, archives, libraries, and the accumulated wisdom of countless species. Entire galactic histories, from the dawn of hyperspace travel to the rise and fall of empires, were stored in its database. With Coruscant's destruction, all that knowledge would burn away. Imagine millions of civilizations losing records of their ancestry, their art, their discoveries. It's not just a planet lost. Its identity, memory, and cultural pride turned to dust. And here's another angle. Coruscant wasn't just important to the elite. For everyday people across the galaxy, Coruscant was a symbol of connection. Holonet broadcasts, trade routes, interstellar festivals, they all found their roots in the capital. If you lived on some remote Outer Rim world, seeing Coruscant lit up with celebrations made you feel part of something larger. Destroying it would sever that connection, leaving billions feeling not only abandoned, but culturally adrift. Now let's think about what replaces that cultural core. Without Coruscant, which world becomes the center of galactic identity? Does Corellia, with its legendary shipyards, rise to prominence? Does Mon Cala, known for its artistic traditions, claim cultural leadership? Or does the galaxy fracture entirely, with no single world carrying the torch of unity? Whatever the case, it's safe to say that destroying Coruscant would create a cultural vacuum, and vacuums have a way of pulling in chaos before they settle. Here's the part that really stings. Cultures thrive on continuity. They need landmarks, traditions, and symbols to ground them. Coruscant was that symbol for nearly every species. Its destruction would send a powerful message that nothing is sacred, not even history itself. And once people start to believe that their past can be erased, they fight desperately to protect whatever remains of their future. So, ask yourself this. Would the loss of Coruscant unite the galaxy in cultural mourning, or would it spark endless divisions as worlds scramble to claim their piece of the cultural spotlight? If Starkiller Base had destroyed Coruscant, the political and cultural chaos would have been devastating. But the military consequences might have been even more dramatic. You see, Coruscant wasn't just a shining city planet. It was a strategic hub. It held fleets, training academies, supply depots, and command centers. Taking it off the board would throw the galactic balance of power into absolute disarray. First, let's talk about logistics. The New Republic, already criticized for downsizing its military after the fall of the Empire, relied heavily on Coruscant's infrastructure. That planet was the nexus where ships were built, repaired, and coordinated. Without it, the Republic would lose not only countless ships, but also the facilities to maintain and direct the ones that survived. It would be like decapitating an army, not just removing the head, but shattering its ability to think, move, and fight. Now, consider the psychological impact on soldiers. Every military force fights, not just with weapons, but with morale. Coruscant was a symbol of safety for the galaxy's defenders. The idea that the capital will always stand gave them something to fight for. Imagine watching that planet vanish in a single strike. Morale wouldn't just dip, it would collapse. Troops stationed on distant fronts might desert, commanders might hesitate to engage, and the sense of unity within the ranks would fracture. After all, if the First Order could wipe out the very heart of the Republic, what chance did smaller outposts or fleets stand? But here's the twist. The military fallout wouldn't just weaken the Republic. It could actually strengthen the Resistance. Remember, the Resistance was operating in the shadows, outside the official New Republic structure. They weren't tied down to Coruscant's bureaucracy or dependent on its supply lines. While the Republic military would be crippled, the Resistance could suddenly emerge as the only organized group still capable of fighting the First Order. In this way, the destruction of Coruscant might accelerate the Resistance's rise, giving Leia Organa's forces newfound legitimacy as the galaxy's best hope. On the other side, the First Order would see an immediate surge in power. Militarily, destroying Coruscant would send a message louder than any speech. We can annihilate your strongest strongholds in seconds. This intimidation factor could push countless systems to surrender without a fight. After all, why risk defiance if the price is planetary annihilation? Yet this kind of rule by terror is a double-edged vibroblade. History in the galaxy shows us that when fear is the only tool of control, rebellion brews beneath the surface, quietly at first, but explosively when the time is right. So, would the galaxy's militaries collapse into scattered, powerless fleets? Or would Coruscant's destruction ignite the most desperate, determined resistance the galaxy had ever seen? That's the real military question at the heart of this what if. Here's where things get really interesting. If Coruscant were destroyed, the galaxy wouldn't just lose its capital, it would lose its center of gravity. Power abhors a vacuum, and with the heart of galactic politics gone, ambitious worlds and factions would waste no time stepping up to claim the throne. The question isn't if new powers rise, but who seizes the opportunity first. Let's start with the core worlds. Planets like Corellia, Chandrila, and Quat would suddenly find themselves in a position to wield unprecedented influence. Corellia's legendary shipyards could make it the new military powerhouse, while Quat's engineering and industrial dominance could let it dictate terms to anyone leading warships. Chandrila, once the capital of the New Republic, could reassert itself as a center for diplomacy and governance. Each of these worlds might try to crown itself the new Coruscant, but their rivalry could just as easily spiral into political infighting. Then there are the Outer Rim powers, who have always lived in the shadow of the core. For centuries, they resented the centralized authority of Coruscant. Its destruction would be their moment to rise. Worlds like Mon Cala, with its proud history of rebellion and starship production, could take a leading role. Even planets like Mandalore, if united, might see the chaos as the perfect chance to reclaim galactic relevance. Suddenly, the galactic hierarchy flips, and the so-called backwater worlds find themselves at the front of the stage. But it's not just governments we have to worry about. The criminal underworld thrives in times of chaos. With Coruscant's political and military control obliterated, organizations like the Hutt Cartel, the Black Sun, or even Crimson Dawn could expand unchecked. Imagine entire sectors where law and order collapse overnight, replaced by syndicates ruling through credits, spice, and blasters. In some parts of the galaxy, these groups might become the de facto governments, reshaping borders not with treaties, but with turf wars. Now, here's a chilling possibility. What if the First Order doesn't remain the only major authoritarian power? Coruscant's destruction could embolden other radical groups to step into the spotlight. Separatist loyalists, warlords left over from the Empire, or even ambitious Force-sensitive leaders might try to carve out their own fiefdoms. The galaxy could fracture into dozens of competing powers, each claiming legitimacy, each drawing supporters, and each escalating the chaos. The real danger here isn't just the rise of one new capital. It's the loss of any central authority altogether. Instead of one Coruscant, you'd have 10 mini Coruscants, each fighting to control the narrative, the economy, and the fleets. In other words, the galaxy wouldn't just be destabilized. It could plunge into an era of fragmentation worse than the Clone Wars. So, what happens when every world with ambition suddenly sees itself as the heir to galactic leadership? Do they unite against the First Order, or tear each other apart while the First Order laughs in the shadows? If Starkiller Base had annihilated Coruscant, the galaxy would never return to the same trajectory. This wouldn't just be a battle lost or a political crisis. It would be a permanent scar on galactic history. Let's imagine what that long-term future looks like. First, we'd see a fundamental shift in how the galaxy views safety. For millennia, Coruscant was untouchable. No matter how many wars raged, no matter how many governments rose and fell, the city world endured. Its destruction would shatter that sense of permanence. People across the galaxy would live with the chilling realization that no world is safe, no civilization is eternal. This kind of fear doesn't vanish after one generation. It lingers, shaping politics and culture for centuries. Second, the memory of Coruscant would become a rallying cry. Survivors, historians, and even everyday citizens would keep telling the story of its destruction. Songs, poems, and holodramas would immortalize the day the jewel of the galaxy was turned to dust. Entire political movements could rise around this shared trauma. Some might use it to fuel rebellion against tyranny, while others might exploit it to argue for tighter control and authoritarian measures to prevent it from ever happening again. In both cases, the ghost of Coruscant would continue to influence galactic policy long after the First Order had faded. Now, let's think about the Jedi and the Force. The Jedi Temple, gone forever, would leave the Order with no physical anchor to its ancient traditions. For Force-sensitive individuals, this might trigger a rebirth of new philosophies. Without Coruscant's dominating influence, new Jedi sects, or even entirely new interpretations of the Force, could rise in far-flung corners of the galaxy. Coruscant's absence wouldn't just change politics, it could redefine the spiritual destiny of the galaxy itself. Economically, the galaxy would need to rewire itself. Coruscant wasn't just the capital, it was the hub of trade routes, banking, and commerce. Losing it would force shipping lanes to reroute, financial systems to relocate, and corporations to scramble for stability. Planets that step into this role would become wealthy overnight, while others could collapse into ruin. The ripple effect of Coruscant's absence would reshape galactic maps just as much as its political fallout. And here's the biggest takeaway. Coruscant's destruction would mark the end of an era. The galaxy would no longer be a place with one shining capital, one agreed-upon center of power. Instead, it would enter an age of decentralization, where multiple powers compete, and no single world carries the same unifying weight. For some, that's freedom. For others, it's chaos. But either way, the galaxy would never truly be the same. So in the end, if Starkiller Base had destroyed Coruscant, the galaxy wouldn't just lose a planet, it would lose its soul. And that loss would echo through every star system, every generation, and every battle to come.